What's up, people, and welcome back to What's the Difference, where I compare the various different versions of a given media. This is the Shaman King edition, where I've been going over the various differences of the Shaman King adaptations, from the manga, to the 2001 anime, to the 2021 anime. It's been a fairly, somewhat consistent ride right up until the previous episode, where we found ourselves bouncing between multiple episodes of filler. And while I wasn't the biggest fan of said filler, it wasn't the worst possible. You saw various instances of Yo and the gang just kind of wandering through America for the most part. Now, a lot of their geographical locations from episode to episode were incredibly inconsistent, but it had its ups and its downs. Multiple instances of Yo just kind of going with the flow, Lyser getting a little fed up with the fact that they never seemed to be on task, and how having several moments where he just wanted Yo to just get on with it for the most part. And while it's not the most perfect thing around, I actually found myself enjoying it in certain places. And a lot of my outlook on the situation has been a little bit more lightened because of a video that I saw by Ethereon, link in the description below, who really went to bat for a lot of the filler episodes of the gang traveling through America, and brought up some fairly good points. Didn't argue against them being somewhat boring in a lot of places, but he made a pretty good argument, and I definitely feel like that video is worth a view from you. But last episode, the main points were that Horo found himself separated from the group in two different instances. One that felt a little hokey, the other that felt actually a little bit more of a genuine experience for Horo. In the 2001 version, he went off to find food for the rest of the group, ended up finding this Native American boy who was protecting this specific patch of forest from people who were trying to do a little bit of deforestation for whatever reason. And by people, I mean essentially automated trucks and shit, because none of the trucks seemed to have people in them, which was weird. And ultimately the forest ended up being destroyed. Horo unlocked his second version of his oversoul with a specialized tool that he got from his sister before he left. And they were able to destroy some of the forest in order to preserve the rest of it from burning down. In the manga and the 2021 version, we got Horo end up being lost because Kororo got a little jealous of Morphine, and so when he was snowboarding and needed Kororo's help, she was nowhere to be found. He got injured, got picked up by a park ranger named Blue Block, who desperately wanted to keep Horo from being mauled by this kind of vicious bear who had a bad history with humans. So, being the meddler and nature lover who respects nature because of his culture that he is, Horo went out, found the bear, and actually managed to develop a bond with the bear right before it got shot in the head by a poacher. And Horo went off, unlocking his second version of his oversoul in order to mostly just scare the hunters, although he, by all accounts, could have murdered them right then and there. So on that side of things, Horo's solo adventure ended up being a lot more bitter, and honestly I kind of preferred that for the most part. It didn't feel too overly preachy, but you get the message well enough. And thus we enter into Volume 11 of the manga, Chapter 95, Feeling Mesa Verdede, 5 vs 5, the 2001 episode number 35, The Vampire Legend, and the 2021 episode 16, Enter the Ultra-Pompandour. Let's jump in. Now in the original anime, you get a little bit of a flashback to a character who's going to be very important going forward. This really does help to add a lot of context to the character who's going to be very prominent. Gotta love the white hoods. As a black man, I feel very, about that. Yeah, the horrible persecution that they ended up facing simply because of who they were. I mean, this is good context to have. It's a brutal origin, honestly, and you really end up feeling for the character for the most part. It is a fantastic setup to what's coming because honestly, they don't do enough of that for the character once you actually meet him in the other versions. He just kind of shows up, then you get his backstory. But having that intro, it's just like you already feel for the character for the most part. If there's one thing that the original anime really did well, it set up a tone, and a solid tone at that. It honestly took a lot of these characters a lot more seriously than the other version. Meanwhile, in the original manga and the newer anime, Horo arrives from his solo adventure, and everybody's kind of upset because it's just like, where have you been? What have you been doing? And he gives a very vague response that nobody is chill with. And then they manage to get a van, they go around solving mysteries. Honestly, this would have been a great way of having them travel around America. And Ren just beating up Horo because he's been giving vague answers and acting really strangely smug. And boom, they arrive at Mesa Verdede, which is the entrance to the Patch Village. I also like in the manga that they actually talk a little bit more about the cultural site and its relevance to the people and all that. That's something that I hate that they left out of the newer anime because, I mean, like, explore the cultural side of this stuff, guys. Come on. And then it's full of tourists. And it's just like, it's America. Like, seriously. It really is the most, like, accurate thing to have it crawling with tourists. Because in so many different series, you have these historical sites that not a person is around. Like, I review Miraculous Ladybug as well, and like they're constantly going towards the Eiffel Tower, nobody around. And it's just like, no, that place would be swarming with tourists like 24/7 almost. They just kind of wander around trying to find something. Eventually find a keep out location, and it's just like, what could this be? And then boom, the followers of How. And Lyserg flips his shit. It is amazing. I guess to a certain degree, that's what gives a little bit more credibility to the original anime, where Lyserg is constantly in that aggro nature, where if anything involving How is brought up, he's just ready to lose it at a moment's notice. He is ready to go off. But to a certain degree, I also kind of appreciate that Lyserg actually is friendly towards Yo and the gang. You know, it feels like it just makes more sense that, you know, they actually brought him in as a friend, that Yo saw something in Lyserg that had a little bit more of a positive towards it. You know, you actually saw the good nature of Lyserg. It really is my biggest problem with Lyserg in the original anime, because Lyserg really just comes off as an overly aggro jerk, and he's just not getting over those aggro points of his nature. Love this, where they see Yo and it's just like, man, you really look like How. Probably just because you're his descendant. And I loved how it was also done in the original anime, because one of the anime only followers of How spills the beans during a fight, and it's just like, say what? It just comes out of nowhere. But again, whereas Lyserg starts to kind of lose it and lose all faith in Yo immediately at that point and goes into an aggro state, here it's just kind of like, oh shit. And Gio's just so laid back about the situation. It's just like, oh, that's why we look alike. Although I do find it, like, it's a little disappointing because even Tokagero, Bason, Kuroto, Midamaru all are also kind of like in on it. Like, even Morphine are just like, oh man, this is a startling revelation. And then they're also like, what? Yo, come on, have a little bit more of a reaction to it. So them leaving that out is also kind of disappointing, because it's just like, it gives the spirits a little bit more of a personality and autonomy. And it's a little bit of a bummer when the newer anime isn't willing to just animate a few more sprite-like characters. And whereas the filler character from previous episode was given orders to kill off 2 of Yo's friends, here they've been given orders to kill off 4 of his friends, which is essentially all the rest of them. Lyserg ends up being bit, and I wish they had added in the line that Lyserg was blinded by his anger, and that's what made him an easy target. Because honestly, the original anime feels the need to constantly have Lyserg be angry all the time. I like it more where it's just like anything to do with how is the thing that sets him off, and he loses himself in that instant. And of course, in comes Ryu trying to help out his Lyserg, and Boris just disappears in the blood and cuts off Ryu's hair once again. Boom. 2 of our members down easily. And that just shows how capable, these characters are. And before we move on to the next part, let's pop back in with the original anime, where our team is, where everyone's just randomly outside of a church. There's any number of explanations going on there. And Ryu has decided to just go see a movie. Just randomly. Just see a vampire movie. Just for shits and giggles. Because apparently Ryu has money. It's such a random occurrence to just have Ryu viewing a movie for no reason. Although I love how Tokagero is actually kind of freaked out. It's a charming little moment. Builds a little bit of Tokagero's character, if nothing else. And the fact that he smells blood, building up to a real creepy moment with Boris. They really wanted to buy into the whole vampire thing. And then Boris just appears. I mean, I guess it does kind of make a little bit of sense because of Boris's past, like hunted down because he was a descendant of Vlad Tepes Dracula, and people were still hunting down his family because they lived in such a rural area, despite the fact that the family never did anything wrong for the most part. And of course he would end up hating a lot of the vampire stuff because of how it really just continues on with those stereotypes that were hoisted upon his family and got them killed. So it's a good direction to go into, if nothing else. Although the fact that he just shows up in a theater, and that he also adapted the nature of an actual vampire. Ooh, he immediately goes in for the strike and it does nothing. I love the theatrics of that, where he also disappears like the character on the screen. I mean, it brings up the question, it's just like, for a guy who takes offense to the way his family is kind of portrayed in movies, the weird depiction of his ancestor, he decides to act just like it. But that's also in all versions. He acts like an actual vampire despite taking offense to the way vampires are portrayed. Although in the manga, he actually kind of embraces it a little bit more, so it raises a lot of questions. And then you see the X-Laws again. Oh man, I love freaking lilies, I swear to God. Gotta love that the X-Laws are already kind of dealing with Yo, quarantining off any situation that involves them and how. Yeah, the X-Laws, they really play up the creepy factor in the original anime of how weird the X-Laws are. It's unfortunate that it's Ryu who ends up being the first victim, and they had to force Tokagero back. It feels weird that it's Ren who just deduces that it was a follower of Hao, instead of them just coming at them head on. I mean, again, it builds up a lot of the atmosphere and tension, but there's also the kind of question of, why do they need to lurk in the shadows to do this? Oh god. Only go after pure innocent maidens. Why would anyone go after Ryu? And thus Ryu is possessed. Again, it's really kind of unfortunate that Ryu's the one who ends up possessed. It kind of demeans a lot of aspects of his character for the most part. And then he just gets frozen. It's like he probably won't die from that. And then all of this is going on. And he's just like, yeah, this vampire stuff. And doing a bit of a mystery, they kind of buy a little bit more time. And then this guy just stoking the whole situation of, oh, Dracula, vampires, and gives a whole history mystery about Dracula, the original Boris Tepish Dracula. No, Vlad Tepish Dracula. Vlad the Impaler. And it's really stoking their fears and all that. I love how Boris is just chilling out there in the graveyard. Oh no, it makes Boris seem a little bit weaker because he has to resort to like minor tactics like this, but he seemed a lot more stronger in the manga and newer anime because he confronted them head on and caught them slipping for the most part. And stuff with Anna that we've already been over. Meanwhile, in the manga, we have chapter 96, Blood and Pompadour, where Boris introduces his ally, the vampire hunter Blumro. Also love this double page spread in the manga where you get to see everybody in their battle outfits, which you haven't really gotten to see in the series, mostly because they haven't really battled too many people. That's the difference between the series. Because, for them, they haven't really done anything too much in the actual manga. Whereas in the older anime, they've been fighting a lot. Left, right, and center. Seriously. Although I love the little bit of comedy between all of them where they're just like, Dracula, they already know about Dracula. It's just like, of course they would. Yes, it's like 1999, 2000, but it's just like, yeah, we already know about Dracula. And they even point to the one follower of Hal that was very prominent during the episode where Hal tried to drown a whole bunch of shamans in a frozen river, but he's just kind of played off for yucks for the most part. And it's just like, he looks more like Dracula than you. They're just making fun of the situation despite what happened to Lyserg and Ryu. And it makes me kind of wonder, it's just like, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the whole lighthearted situation going on with them? Or do you prefer them taking Boris a little bit more seriously? You have overlapping characters, like, winking and nodding to the series. And Boris actually feels, like, insulted because of this, and even goes so far as to just kill his ally, like, right then and there. It's so messed up. Although they completely cut out the fact that, there's still tourists around, and they saw what happened. And the only thing one of the other followers of Hao has to say is like, dude, we're trying to keep a low profile here. But they're very nonchalant about Daimaji dying. It's just like, whatever. And then Boris takes his wings, his blood wings, and just inserts it into Boris, draining his essence, turning him into nothing. And everyone else is so nonchalant about it. It's like, you just have to make up for what Damaji did. You have to take his share of the fighting. I actually do prefer it to be Lyserg, who's the one who's bitten by the vampire, rather than Ryu. And how Boris keeps spouting all this vampire rhetoric, and they're just like, dude, vampires aren't real. What's wrong with you? Although Boris is just like, yeah, no, none of that stuff actually happens that way. Goes in for the attack and boom! In comes Ryu. Like, nah, you fighting me, motherfucker. And I love that Ryu actually wants to just get in on a battle. Like, a solid battle, too. Like, Ryu ready to go? Come on, man. I've been waiting for this. And then Ryu restyles his hair, shows off his new battle outfit, and he's ready to go. Let's go, Ryu! And we also see that the Oyamada company, the wealth of Manta. Meanwhile, in the older series, trying to figure out how to save Ryu, which is just like, it really does feel reductive to Ryu, because Ryu's like ready to take this dude on in the other series, but in the original anime, he's just kind of ready to just be a victim for the most part. And then we get to see that Daimaji is pretending to be this priest in order to kind of stoke their fear and kind of get them to, for the most part, not cooperate properly. To believe in superstition. And Lyserg mulling over the situation with the X-Laws, which we haven't gotten to in the manga and newer series. Dude's ready to cap Lyser right then and there. And it makes me feel a kind of way about the way they treat certain situations. Like, we came because we're worried about you. We are on your side. Unless you're not on ours. Then we will shoot you in the face. It's like, in your current state, you can't defeat the vampire. If you really wish to defeat the vampire, you must become stronger. And it's just really playing into Lyserg's insecurities about wanting to be stronger. It's like, you have to not have can't take pity on anyone. You have to just kill off your friends. It's just like really selling the X-Laws as terrible people. And thanks to Daimaji's spirit, the ice is broken. And then Horo gets taken by the vampire. But it leaves for you. It's like, why is he back to his normal self? As now, Horo has been possessed. And that's kind of what gives away the whole situation with Boris. Lyserg holds Horo in place. And then it's just like, Lyserg, what you doing, buddy? What you doing, buddy? And then he just gets ready to straight up kill Horo. It's just like, at that point, it's just like, yo, fuck you, Lyserg. Fuck you. Were you helping out? Like, you guys need to fucking hide. And Millie's just like, yeah, your boyfriend becoming a murderer. And I love how mad Yo is. He's so pissed. And Lyserg's so nonchalant about the situation, trying to justify all of this. Like, you can't defeat How if you're like that, Yo. I wish Yo would have just beat his ass right then and there. Like, can you promise me something? If I become like Ryu or Horo, kill me. It's just like, Lyserg, fucking get over yourself, my god. It's like, I get it with Lyserg, but that attitude that he has is too much. It's too much sometimes. I'm dealing with it for like 15 episodes is too annoying sometimes. I mean, it drives home that even though they've been traveling together this entire time, Lyserg is still acting this way. So it just goes to show that he was beyond hope for the most part. But man, it's difficult to deal with and still enjoy Lyserg's character to any degree. Meanwhile, Daimaji is leading the two lilies into a trap. In the manga, his spirit is actually like a, some kind of other kind of insect. Not so much this, but you never see it because he ends up dying so quickly in the manga. And then you get to see that he was working with Boris the entire time. Like, yes, our plan has worked. They're quarreling amongst themselves and nope. Just like that. Just like in the manga, Daimaji is just killed off so easily. It's just like, just because you're a human and you've outlived your usefulness, they just drains Daimaji dry and poof, he's dust. It's like he killed his comrade without a second thought. My name is Boris Tepish Dracula. I am a noble vampire, and Daimaji was a mere human whom I despise. I mean, it's hard to say which I kind of prefer. At least Daimaji actually did a little bit more in the original anime and wasn't just killed off as a joke. But at the same time, at least in the manga, Boris was actually a little bit sad about what he ended up doing to Daimaji. It's just like, oh, he was a comrade, what did I do? But in the original anime, it's just like, he was a human. I don't care. It's like, I exist for the sake of Hao-sama. And then he's just like, are you weak to garlic? And then he just like gives the whole spiel. Who would be hurt by garlic and afraid of crosses? Woo da da da. He just disappeared so easily. Your heart is filled with anger and full of openings, just like in the other series. And boom, he gets bitten. Like, please kill me if I become like Ryu and Horo. And thus the X-Laws have decided to move in finally. Beautiful new ending. Always love the music video quality of the ending. And of course, Megumi Hayashibara. Like, the one thing I can definitely say about the old anime, music was a bop, dude. It was a bop. And whereas in the manga and newer anime, they're riding over in a helicopter. First they have to head over in the Oyamata private jet. And then we're still kind of dealing with Manta's manservant in both series. I like that his servant is a little bit more nicer about the whole situation. And Anna's acting like a diva. Love that both versions just have Manta heading out to help, doing his little bit of a part. And thus we are in Chapter 97, Enter the Ultra-Pompandour. And in terms of episodes, for the older anime, we are in episode 36, Angel's Pistol. Lyser gets bit, Yo goes on the attack, Boris manages to get out the way, and we get a little bit of a reveal that his cloak is actually his oversoul, and for some reason he's doing revenge for the Tepes family. Millie trying to help out. At least she's trying. Millie gets skewered, but no! It's Ryu brings out his ultimate attack, the Yamato no Orochi. A double team attack, pretty cool. And then it's just like, yeah, for some reason Horohoro's back to normal. But Lyserg was bitten. It's like, as long as I remain unfarmed, he will become my vampire servant. And there we have. Ryu is finally ready to bring forth his true power. Thus, the Pompadour lives! Ryu is finally ready to throw down. Ryu's ready to throw down. So good. Whereas Lyserg's being taken care of by Yo. Boris just got decked in the face by Ryu. Oh, it's like, oh, it connects right to the movie theater. Wild. And then we deal with the patch. Just like the reception is terrible. And the fact that Hao has been just taking care of shamans left and right to eliminate them is funny too, because this is a situation that also happens in the manga, but honestly a lot of them are a little bit colder about this whole situation. And the fact that they're just like, yeah, we're just now gonna take out everyone inside just to deal with Boris. Like, yeah, let's get out of the way of this. Millie's trying to go to bat for Team Yo. The whole fact they're just like, have you been contaminated? I do appreciate that at least the Lily 5 are willing to try to be there for each other. That feels at least a little relevant. They got brownie points from me in this whole situation. It's like, my sword is more than a wooden stake. He's not a vampire, he's just a human, a shaman. It's just like, yeah, no shit. Like, yeah, but everybody who's bitten is fine now. There's something wrong with that. And that's kind of how Boris showed his hand in the original anime, where it's just like, he's going around biting various different people, and they're all being possessed and being fine afterwards. That's not how vampires work, bro. Yeah, you can only control one person at a time. Which is something that I think that it should have been Lyserg to figure out in the manga and newer series. Boris is trying to go in after Ryu, and then he just gets punched in the face again. I love how badass Ryu feels in the manga and newer anime. Doing just a lot more justice to Ryu. He brings out Tokugero, new attack. Oh, love it. Yes, Ryu, going in with those strikes. Although he doesn't light up a cigarette, because he's a little too young and they don't want to promote smoking. Yeah, and I love the fact that they're just like, Ryu's actually tougher than you think he is. It's just like, well, Yo's grandpa did train him. It's like he's only been in one fight since then, since we were at Ren's house. And then they talk about how Tokugero, since he's over 600 years old, he's kind of ascended to a different form. Also love that there are still tourists around in the manga. It's just like, yeah, normal people are seeing all the bullshit going on here and be like, what the fuck? Although he's told, don't get, taken off guard just because he's controlling such an advanced form of spirit. Boris is determined to have some form of vengeance in every version. But Ryu's just like, you know what? No. And Ryu manages to perfectly catch all of Boris's attacks. I love it. I love how strong Ryu seems, seemingly smashing everything to pieces, only for them to turn into bats. And now we have the discussion from the patch, where they discuss everything that's been going on. Should we really just allow all of this to keep happening? Is it how too dangerous? Shouldn't we be helping out? Everything for 500 years will happen again. But it's actually Silva who says that, look, whoever wins will be king. You know, the competition has already begun. I guess they're trying to keep Silva's personality in line with everything else, because it felt very off that it was Silva who's just like, no, just let it happen. Only the people who survive are worthy. We enter into chapter 98. The smell of sadness. But I thought that was something relevant that, you know, in one version it's Goldiva who's just like, just let it happen, it needs to happen, whoever survives, they're the only worthy one, blah blah blah. But for it to be in the manga and newer anime, Silva, who was so impassioned about dealing with Ren beforehand, it feels a little off. Ryu's trying to deal with all this, but the bats keep forming and multiplying and biting him. And then Yo tries to step in, only to be cornered by Lyserg. So in all versions he ends up being caught like stupidly easily. And then all of the blood from the bats come back to him and empower Boris. Tokugero gets freaked out and tries to run, which is weird. It's just like, what does that say about Ryu that Tokugero fled like that? For followers of Howard, just like, yeah, Boris is getting worked out, let's bail. And it's just like, if you manage to get past this, you'll have us to deal with. So, we're on the only path that leads to the Patch Village, so you'll have to deal with us sooner or later. I love how everyone else is like a little bit more concerned. It's just like, oh, the entrance is right there. But Ryu still stands tough, and he's just mad about the fact that Boris murdered his comrade so easily. That's something that plays into Ryu's character. It's just like, he's so attached to his group of friends, and to have someone just so matter-of-factly kill what seemed to be his friend, his comrade, of course that wouldn't sit well with Ryu. And then the older anime finally has the explanation of who Blomero is. Like, don't say anything unnecessary, Blomero. But I do like the connection that Ryu tries to form with Boris, because he understands that Boris is a bit of an outcast. He senses the inner soul of Boris. Tokugero expects the situation. It's just like, his cape is made out of blood. Yeah, and they get the gist of exactly what's going on, the nature of Boris's oversoul and all that. We now enter into volume 12 of the manga. And that's chapter 99, Legend of the Impaler. Almost at chapter 100. 100 chapters of Shaman King. Again, I love the bystanders who are still hanging around in the manga. It's just like, what the fuck is going on? And then Ren analyzes the situation. The fact that Lyserg is being controlled by Blumro. And then we hear the legend of the Impaler. And then Boris gives his backstory that I feel like it's better to hear it from him rather than the other dude. Like in the original anime, it's just like some random dude telling you the legend of vampires and Dracula and all that is odd. But in all versions, eventually Boris decides, I'm going to tell you my great and powerful backstory of my ancestor Vlad Dracula, how he was given the story of the Impaler, of being a vampire. I'm just saying, they lived in a terrible time, war and strife, the Ottoman Empire coming to attack them, and so he did some terrible, nasty things in order to keep them away, to bring fear to their enemies, but it also brought fear to their allies. And then he ended up being killed because of all of that. How they were hunted down eventually. See, in the manga, they're just random people, but in the newer anime, one of them looks like a friggin' Belmont. It's weird. You know, vampire hunters coming to hunt down his family. I do enjoy that we did see it in the beginning of the anime before we were introduced to Boris properly. It's just like, just how terrible the things that he went through actually were in the history of Blumro. Although it does contradict with a little bit of the story, because here it's like how telling them, hey, how to fight back against the vampires. Well, the vampire hunters. It was like who taught them shamanic abilities and all of that. And it being integrated into his family of what to do. And so here's where the biggest differentiation actually is, where Boris actually attacks several of the tourists, draining them of their blood in order to integrate into him. So I guess the newer anime was trying to avoid all of the massive amount of collateral damage, because a lot of people die in this fight with Boris. He just sucks all of these people dry, and he threatens Lyserg. Although in the older series, older anime, he's threatening to make Yo into a vampire, which is a little less threatening. Lyserg's life is a little more threatening than Yo just being bitten and then him being possessed. And death by impalement, either way. It's actually hilarious. They're in a dicey situation. And thus we are in chapter 100 of Shaman King. Spirit Ally Pandemonium. And then Lyserg trying to talk through it in the original anime, where he's just like, you promised to kill me. And like, Yo's like, I didn't promise to do jack diddly shit. Like, if you free him, if you kill him, you'll be freed and you'll escape death. No one will get impaled. Kill him, Yo. Do it. And Yo's like, nah, I don't think I will. It's just like absolutely baffling to him. But Yo's not about murdering people. That's not his thing. And Yo just invites the bite. Meanwhile, in the newer anime and the manga, you have the tale of what exactly they did to Blomro, breaking him, turning him into a servant, and then enslaving his ghost after he died. So like, because of your sentimentality, your friends will die. Woof, 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 woof. He's determined to make them suffer in the way that his family did. And in all versions, Yo is so confident about the situation and tries to impale them all. As simple as that. And I love that Ryu just catches them all, join in on the fight. Yes! Everyone joins in. You don't get the attack from Ren for some reason. And it's just like, Blumro, do it! Do the thing! And then Blumro doesn't do it. It's a little bit more goofy in the older anime. And then you find out the situation that was going on behind the scenes. Whereas in one version, Amidamaru just talked to Blumro and got through to him, rekindled his soul for the most part. In the older anime, they just restrain Blumro, which I don't think is a thing that can happen. And then you get the story of how exactly Boris's stuff actually works. He uses blood as a medium. We've been through all this already. And then for some reason they decide to have it be Ren who deals the finishing blow for the most part. But I prefer it to be Ryu's battle. It was Ryu's fight. This was a great moment for Ryu to shine. I like that he gets a little bit of assistance from Ren in order to get up to where Boris is, but, you know, it's better when it's Ryu to deal the finishing blow. Because of friendship, they all work together in order to get to this point. And just how risky of a maneuver it was, because Lyser could have actually died, but they work through it. I really prefer how things end in the newer anime and in the manga. There's a lot of trust they had to have in each other. And it seems weird that you could just restrain somebody's ghost instead of, Amidamaru talks to him and it's just like, yo, dude, come back to your senses, find your human soul. And whereas in the manga, you don't yet see the ability that Ryu has until later on, because they go a little bit into chapter 101, Blazing Tenacity, because it's the start of Ryu's flashback in what he actually had to go through in order to gain this newer technique. So Boris doesn't just get defeated just yet, but I prefer it to be Ryu to deal the finishing blow. Show off what he's got. Show off that incredible power that he's developed in order to fight against other shaman and all that good stuff, before the X-Laws intervene. So ultimately, while a lot of these things hit similar beats, similar action beats, there is, in fact, a world of difference. Whereas for Lyserg, there's a lot more emphasis on his anger and frustration in the older anime. Whereas he still has the moment of getting kind of upset and losing his cool, and that gives an opening to Boris to get him under his control. Lyserg's obsession is really given too much emphasis to a certain point that I don't really much care for in the end. It's not the worst thing around, it's just that it's too overly pronounced for my taste. Maybe not for you, but, to each their own. For you, I feel like this whole situation kind of undermined a lot of what the manga and newer anime did for his character, of putting him at the forefront of this battle. That it was his to go in with the finishing blow, really show off a lot of his skills, what he could do, the whole shebang. And for Ryu to only whip out a lot of these attacks and abilities now, it kind of undercuts, like, why don't you do most of these awesome things in earlier fights that we've had? You've only ever used your ultimate attack against a waterfall? Like, come on, man. I prefer it to be that he uses his ultimate attack against a worthy opponent, a follower of How. It builds up a lot more tension that way. I mean, ultimately, it is a group effort to take the dude down. That's fine. But this was Ryu's time to shine. The guy really deserves it. Especially for the return of his Pompadour? Like, come on. Where's the pomp and circumstance? That's my question. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Did you like the legend of Boris that they try to build up in the older series? They do him a lot of justice, but at the same time, it makes it seem like he had to do a lot of hit and run tactics in order to face them. Whereas in the manga and newer anime, he confronts all of them head on and actually gives them a run for their money. He feels a lot more imposing in the manga and newer anime. But that's just how I feel. Let me know how you feel in the comment section below. What was your favorite moment? And do you feel any of the changes made between versions were warranted? Like leaving out all the tourists who end up dying in the newer version, or making it more of a murder mystery kind of thing in the older anime? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.